Why did he have to go like that? And why was it only 16 years that he was scheduled to live?
Nanah is my brother's daughter who lost her life last year.
As a black therapist, right, I come into the space like, yeah, I get it, you can't quit. If there's nothing that I can say but I validate you, because I've been there and I know how it feels, and that shit sucks.
That's deep. I need that. I'm glad you held space for me to share that.
Welcome to another edition of Pain and the Purpose podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Pain into Purpose podcast. I am your host today, Coach Fee.
And I'm the co-host, DB.
Today we are talking about our faith on empty, tragedy. When tragedy strikes, do we lose our faith in the divine, or do we dive deeper into our faith? What do you think about that?
When I say I'm different, when it comes to Nanah being murdered, I never blame God. God didn't have nothing to do with that. You know what I'm saying? And I know people like to say God is in control of everything. God knows everything. God allows. I don't believe that. So I get into it with a lot of spiritual people about that all the time. And I don't care. Because you're not going to tell me that somebody that's not the author of chaos and confusion will allow something like this to happen and cause a bunch of chaos and confusion. Right. And I've said this before on other podcasts. I've never shot my gun thinking about God. So I'm not going to say that this particular person was thinking about God when he pulled his trigger. Just not going to happen. I actually think that God has been doing an amazing job at keeping me safe and sane and surrounding me with people that love me unconditionally and support me and allow me to continue to be me. So I don't blame God for this. And I had a pastor on here, and he used the biblical terms as far as
Quoting scripture,
how God didn't have nothing to do with this, and from, if I can remember correctly, he said anybody that said that God has something to do with this is like calling God a murderer, and that's not how he rocked. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But I do know that I've come across several people who do believe God has something to do with their child demise.
How so?
I never get into that, but I never get into the specifics of it because unless it's a natural event,
right,
I can see that aspect of it. But when it's violence inflicted by another human, I can't see God being in that situation. So,
I agree.
What's your point of view of that? What's your take?
Religion, spirituality, those are very broad topics because there's so many different beliefs as it pertains to the divine, right? Although I'm not a religious person, I was raised in an Islamic household. My father is Muslim, and so I was brought up with the Islamic beliefs, right? Now, as an adult, I lean more towards just the spiritual aspect of it. I don't have a religious preference, even though I still respect the religion as is. So for me, I don't think that I could ever blame God for Emanuel's transition. I never was mad. I don't think my faith really cracked. It may have wavered a little bit just based on the fact that he was 16, the way that it happened, it was tragic. Like you said, it wasn't a natural death. That was a tragedy.
Yeah, it was a tragedy, but I'm interested to know what made your faith waver.
Because he was with me. He was staying with me that weekend. Mm-hmm. And maybe it wasn't my faith wavering, so to speak. It was me. It was the guilt that I felt, I guess, feeling a certain level of responsibility and not being able to prevent that from happening, I guess. Not I guess, but yeah, feeling like I wasn't able to prevent that from happening. And then also having to be the one to convey that it happened to his dad. So maybe it wasn't necessarily a faith waiver, it was just more so a guilt, if you will. But I still have, so I think what also comforted me at that time was knowing that when Emanuel went back into the universe, went to the other side, that he was greeted by his mother, right? Because she transitioned 2 years before he did. And so that gave me a certain level of comfort in the midst of all of the turmoil, that he was greeted by his mother, he was greeted by his uncle, and I think he was also greeted by his grandmother. So knowing that when our loved ones transition, they are greeted by their ancestors. So that, and I even thanked his mom, her name is Stacy. I thanked her for allowing me to experience being a bonus mother to her son while he was here. Because if it wasn't for her, I would have.
You would have never had the opportunity.
Right. So I went in spiritually, and I had to just get quiet. I had to get still and realize that, or acknowledge the fact that he is in good hands, and I knew that he was going to be okay, because I was having all these different thoughts in regards to the way that he was taken, right? It was sudden, it was tragic, and we also had a slight level of hope that he was going to make it from being shot, and unfortunately he did not. So once I acknowledged that he was gone, then I started having all these other feelings, all these the thoughts and the emotions, and then also the spiritual aspect of it.
For me, I never, because for me it's not about religion, it's about the relationship I have with a higher power. Mm-hmm. So I'm not very religious, right? And I guess most people say spiritual, but I just think that just time to be a good human. And at this point, I know what's right from wrong. I know how to be a good human. I know how to be not so good human. So I just wake up and decide to be a good human. And I firmly believe that it's strictly about the relationship I have with an higher power, the energy, the universe, the many names that people give this entity. You know what I'm saying? So my faith never thought about being mad at the higher power. So I'm trying to figure out, and maybe you can answer this, maybe that you can answer it. Have you ever, I'll ask it like this. Have you ever came across someone that verbalized them being angry at God? You know what I mean? When you were experiencing the transition, Emmanuel's transition, did anyone ever voice that to you? Because I know people come up to me and they were in the beginning, they were mad. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't.
They were mad at God.
They he shouldn't have done it, and I'm like, God didn't do it. A human did that. You know what I'm saying? But it's a lot of religious people out there, and I don't even know. I don't know if I even want to try to go down a religious rabbit hole.
Because it's definitely that.
I just know that for me. So I think we should just stick to us.
Stick to us. Yeah.
Just stick to us.
Because there's so many different belief systems as it pertains to religion.
There's so many different belief systems. So me, my faith never wavered, and it never changed or anything. And in fact, that my pastor, that when I was going to church, he called for me. I went to go have breakfast with him, but that's because another pastor was on the verge of getting beat up, because he just kept doing stuff, because he did a GoFundMe for my baby and everything was paid for.
And he wasn't asked.
I think the mother asked him, or probably mentioned that she probably needed some money for something that I wasn't willing to pay for. Okay. I think the whole death or the whole funeral fiasco is getting out of hand nowadays. She was only 21 and they did a horse and carriage for her. She was Felix Mitchell. And I was like, I'm not paying for that. So, but just the disrespect, because I reached out to him and he took the first GoFundMe down, then he put another one back up.
Just wasn't on board with that at all.
Not on board with that, and not when everything already paid for. Not when the necessities
Right.
are paid for.
I think I remember seeing you post something about
Yeah,
that.
the Bedfords don't need a
Right.
The Bedfords don't need a GoFundMe. We good. So that's the only thing, faith wise or spiritual wise, that bothered me during the whole process. And
I think one of the questions that I had for God, or just in general, was why? Because both of our children were shot, and I think that was one of the questions. Why did he have to go like that, and why was it only 16 years that he was scheduled to live? And so those are, and then by asking those questions, then somebody else would say, well, you can't question God.
is that really questioning God, though? I think that's a human response to wonder why. I don't think that's a direct question. I think that, and I don't think you was even asked, I don't even think that you even as expecting an answer.
No.
I think that,
As I knew I wouldn't get one. I guess I knew I probably wouldn't get one. I guess I asked it and then answered it myself.
so I think that's part of the grief process. I think that's just like the feelings of a failure. I think that's just part of the grief process. And I don't think that that's wrong or bad. I think now, if this many years later, 6 years later, and you still questioning it, or even a year or two later, if you still question it, I think that's something to be looked into. But when trauma first hit us, you don't know you don't know how to respond. So you just respond the best way you know how. And it comes out in form of questions sometimes.
It makes you sit and think. It made me sit and think.
This is one thing I did. I thank God. And I thanked him because less than 24 hours before, my baby texted me and said, I'm in your section, Pops. Then she called. And so where I would have told her to let's link up later because I had something to do, I stayed and waited. And then we had a 2-hour conversation. And so I was able to get that much needed closure beforehand, right? So I thank God for putting it on my heart to stay and have this final conversation with my baby and get the final picture, right?
Right. Which is your cover.
It's probably the only picture you'll see me with no hat on.
Oh, you did not have a hat on. That's right.
Because it was just spur of the moment. We was just sitting there chopping it up and she was about to leave. And even when I said bye, she said, no, Pops, I'll see you later. You know what I mean? So all those little things. So I thanked him for that moment. And the only other time that I've had a moment like that was with my stepmom, Mama Jackie, before she passed. The night she passed, I happened to go by their house and spend some time with her. And we had a nice long conversation then. So it was, no, I take that back. Because before my cousin Boss Hogg passed away, now this is a time that I did get mad, right? This is a time I did get mad at God. Because my cousin, at the time, we was in our early 20s. I might have been 23, so that means he might have been 24, 25. Mm-hmm. And that morning, we lived together. That morning, we woke up, we wrestled. I won, so I got to use the bathroom first. But on the way out the door, we had a small conversation, and then we jumped in our cars and we raced to work. He got off in Hayward because he was working at Pepsi. I had to go all the way to San Jose because I was working at a computer company. By the time I got to work in San Jose, he was dead. And,
wow.
And he just dropped. He was preparing to welcome a new class of drivers into Pepsi. He was about to host the orientation, and he just passed out and just never came back to.
What was
we never figured out really why, right? And so that situation made me question God back then at 23, right? So, well, actually, no, 21, because it was 1997. So I was 21. I was 21. And so I have had a situation where I lost someone and I have questioned God, but then a lot of my people that I lose on question it. Grandmother was sick, stepmom was sick, mama was sick. You know what I'm saying? My mother had been sick for a few years, and I thanked him in that situation because the Mother's Day before my mom, the year before on Mother's Day, Tammy took me out there to go see her, and then I'm sitting in my mom's house, and it just looked old. It just smelled like an elderly person live here. It's like a aroma. And so I leave and I call bro, and I'm like, bro, send me some money. We about to redo mama's apartment. Whatever I asked him for, he didn't send me $200 of the money. He's like, man, you put it up for just calling me on a random Tuesday, telling me what you about to do. But her last year was comfortable because we refurnished her house. You know what I'm saying? So it's things like that that I look back at and I'm like, you know what I mean? Even though I didn't know what was to come, I'm just glad that things like this happen and able to step up. So
That takes me, so by you sharing that, it took me back to that weekend that Emanuel was with us. Because he hadn't been coming over for 3 weeks prior. So his dad allowed him to come over and hang with us that weekend. And so I was sad for his dad not being able to see him. Well, he did. He saw him before he left that Friday, before he came. But being able to spend that time with him before he was called home, being able to laugh with him and watch movies with him and cook his favorite food. At the time, I was still eating meat. And I was making him, he loved my turkey burgers.
okay.
So that's what I was making for him when we got the news. Literally, I was making, and I had just texted him and said, hey, son, I'm making your favorite food. I'm making your favorite meal. I'm making turkey burgers. When you come back, I'll have 2 of them waiting for you. And then shortly after that, about 10 minutes later, we got the news. But being able to have that memory.
So that's the reframing that I talk about. Yes. So you just got to look at things for, and it's difficult, and I get it. In most situations, it's very difficult to reframe it in a way that you see the beauty in it. Mm-hmm. But just by me sharing, you was able to, you're right, this did happen. So
until this moment, till right now, I hadn't viewed it like that.
And so that's just the way my brain works. You know what I'm saying? And so I have endured so much that I try to find as many moments in my life where I can be happy, right? So I think that would be a major shift in people perspective. And I just told somebody else this maybe like a week or two ago. We focus so much on the moment that they were taken that we forget the thousands of moments that we had with them prior to, and we reduce them to this one moment. And that's why you see me post about Nanah. I don't do it as much now, but I got tons and tons of pictures of my baby that I just look at and videos that I keep close. And then whenever her sisters or anybody posts a video, I'm like, send me that. Because there's so many more moments. Her Nanah life was so much bigger than April 29th. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And as long as I remember that, it processes it a lot better, if that makes sense. So it doesn't negate the hard days. And it doesn't mean that I don't have terrible days. Like, I be having some terrible days, and I still get triggered, and I still cry, and I still laugh, and I still, on the punching bag, I still, you can get a picture and be like, she was hella goofy right here. You know what I'm saying? So learning how to not reduce her or reduce their life to their final moments may make the situation a lot better.
I concur. And it's important that I piggyback off that. Thanksgiving is approaching. And I have a picture, when you talk about pictures, I have a picture that I think I'm going to get put on a shirt. Emanuel and I, that we took on Thanksgiving the year before he transitioned. And it's the only picture that I have with him. Now, the other pictures that I have is with, I think I have one or two with him and Ajay together, all three of us. But this picture specifically is the only one that I have with him. And he almost looks like he came out of my body. Like, look alike in that picture. And significance behind it is that he didn't want to take the picture. But I strongly encouraged him to take a picture with me that day. And it turned out to be a beautiful one. So I feel like I'm going to, feel like I should get that picture put on a shirt or a hoodie or something, wear it week. But it's those types of moments, talking about embracing the moments before their transition, the times that we share with them. And that is a candid moment for me.
Any final words?
Stay grounded. Your faith. Stay, hard as it may feel at times. Stay faithful. Continue to believe.
I'll say this for me. It helps me process when I don't ask why questions and I ask what now questions. You know what I'm saying? So now that this happened, now what's next? And when I ask the what's next question, we end up figuring out something else to do to honor my baby. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. On the heavy days, I'm learning to ask more and more the either what now or what's next. And that puts me in a different headspace. But if you out there and you living and you carrying this heavy weight of grief, just know that you're not alone and it's supposed to hurt.
Add to that? Yeah. Sometimes the most powerful prayer for me is to just say, God, I'm here. I believe. Trust. I feel you. I feel your love. I know that I'm protected. Saying these words gives me sense of solace.
With that being said, this has been another lovely episode of the Pain and the Purpose podcast. I am the host, DB.
I thought I was the host today.
Well, I'm the co-host, DB, and
I was the host, Fee. I guess we switched titles at the end, but in any event,
just creatures of habit. With that being said, y'all have an amazing day. We
love y'all.
Peace.
Peace.